Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions. Thank you for joining me today. Wow, I feel like the energy is heavy and somber. As many of you know, I live in Wimberley, Texas. I live in the hill country in Texas, and the horrific floods that occurred over 4th of July weekend on the 4th of July are very close in proximity to where we live. And while we were fine and okay, a lot of people we know personally have been very tragically impacted. And then there are the news reports that we've all seen. And of course, I would be remiss not to talk about the Sweet Girls Camp, Camp Mystic, and just the tragedy and atrocity in a moment, in an instant. I have a friend, a woman that I am close to, who's really been working to get her life together. And, it's been messy and hard, but she's been doing it and making steps. And I just will share this personal story. But she had bought a camper trailer and she's working on a ranch out in Kerrville, Texas, which was impacted just like Hunt, Texas. That's where the flooding was on the Guadalupe River. And she had just bought her camper and moved it out there, started her new job, spent the first night in the camper, and she was going to park it on her cousin's property. She has a cousin who has property out there. But the first night she got there, she went to a campground for these travel trailers right on the Guadalupe River and woke up at 4:30 in the morning to rising waters, people screaming. And she essentially got out of there with her cat and helped a handful of people. While not just people were being impacted and rushing to get out, but there was livestock, cows and cattle being trapped, horses. There's lots of livestock impacted in this too, apart from the human atrocities and tragedies. But she got out and got in her car, and her camper, as she's driving off, was swept away. And she had owned it for less than a week and, drove closer to home, which isn't for her, it's in Kyle, Texas. But, this all happened early on the 4th of July. And it's just, there are lots of stories like that I know personally because of the people in the hill country in Texas. So it is somber, it's heartbreaking, and there are lots of atrocities that are happening all over the world and that happen every day that don't impact us the same. They may not get the same news coverage and media coverage, but I think when it's closer to home, it touches our humanity and our hearts more personally. And I think there's something quite obviously heartbreaking and saddening about this, but it evokes our hearts. It evokes our feelings, our humanity, the preciousness of our human lives. And I will say this, it has that surreal quality to it when things like that happen. If it is not personally happening to you in real time, where you're fight or flight, running for your life, witnessing those kinds of events, but it has this sombering, sobering effect, but it also has a detaching effect too. For me, it was all happening, it was real, but I could also feel myself detached, and not because I wasn't feeling or caring. It was almost as if my body didn't know how to process it. And I think this is a beautiful analogy for what is happening energetically right now. You all know, because you show up for this podcast and you're curious and listening and growing and seeking, but that energy is shifting, consciousness is shifting, frequencies are shifting. I watched this guy on YouTube who's a geophysicist, and there's so much happening with the sun, the coronal rays in the sun. The Schumann resonance of the Earth just recently shifted from 7 point whatever it is to 8 point something. And it was a short anomaly, but there was a Schumann resonance shift in the Earth's core and frequency. Stuff is happening. We know there have been multiple eruptions and volcanoes, earthquakes. There is a lot happening with the tectonics of Earth itself. There's stuff happening in the galaxy, in the cosmos that is playing into this with these rays that are being emitted into Earth's atmosphere because the sun is just erupting. And so we have that stuff going on, but it's as if, and this is the way it has felt for me for quite a bit, it's 2025, essentially, is that I'm tectonically shifting. The tectonics in my biology, my psycho-spiritual awareness, my psychology, my sensory abilities, it like these I am having these tectonic shifts internally. And sometimes I can let them be and respond to them, and other times they are wildly uncomfortable. So there's this natural element of feeling things differently, noticing something is different, and then this detachment or numbness even, and numbness is a big one, and to me, it's that apathy, the numbness that I can mistake for lack of creativity, lack of vitality, lack of motivation. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing enough. What should I be doing? My rational brain will go into logic and rationalizing or reasoning out what is very unreasonable within because it's different, it's new. So, whatever you're feeling, and I imagine this resonates deeply with you because there are changes occurring in and around us, and they're translating into our day-to-day life and the way that we metabolize information or don't metabolize it for that matter. So I'm going to touch on some of the things that I have been personally experiencing and give you some insights and reflections during this podcast today. And I hope you can take the time to really sit with some deep questions for yourself. And this gives you new clarity in the uncertainty or comfort in the liminal space, the tectonic shifts within, so to speak. One thing I do want to announce and make a big reminder on is I'm having a free full moon virtual ceremony on July 10th, and it's the Capricorn full moon. And I had set this up a couple of weeks ago, but it feels so valuable now. So come as you are. There's a registration link in the show notes in the description of the podcast below that you can sign up. It's free, come as you are. But the intention behind it is frequency and resonance and being able to come back into your center and this newly recalibrated center. And I'm laughing because I'm like, oh gosh, I sound so philosophical right now. But it's like, oh, this makes so much sense. I was talking about the Schumann resonance and the frequency of the planet and how it's shifted to from a 7 point something to an 8 point something, and then it goes back. So it's the earth is trying to shift, coming into that liminal space with a center within it. That is really the frequency of this full moon ceremony, and doing it in collective community, which has a magnifying effect energetically, and also being able to let go, to release. It is a full moon, it's a Capricorn full moon, and of course the polarity in Capricorn and Cancer, so the sun will be in Cancer, the moon in Capricorn is masculine and feminine at its simplest, and at its most divine, it's divine masculine and feminine. So it is a beautifully recalibrating and centering moon that can honor the space to shift, to change in a very uncertain atmosphere. So I hope you will join me if you feel called to bring your own presence, and I'm excited about doing this. I'm looking forward to spending time with you and sharing our frequencies, and also collaborating our high frequencies and our magic, our magnificence, because together there is something much more profound and also taking that time to honor all the things that are going on in the world, the tragedies, atrocities, and how we can offer our hearts and our love because that stuff impacts, that stuff matters. So, one of the things really that I wanted to share today, and it's just showing up where I am. So funny. Normally, I record these podcasts on Mondays. That's kind of my sacred time that Elizabeth, my producer, and I get together and we do this. And I think I've shared this before, but and Elizabeth knows this very well. But my podcast for me, it's never like I'm strategically organizing what's what. I just show up and I know, like, oh, this is what we're talking about today. And I've got this, like, oh, yeah. Well, yesterday on Monday, I'm recording this on Tuesday. It'll air Wednesday, July 9th. But yesterday, I was like, I had a handful of things going on around the house. And it was a little bit too busy and chaotic, but I could have carved out the time, but I didn't want to carve out the time. And it wasn't that I was shirking responsibility or pushing off deadlines or making anybody else's job harder, because I that would be my fear, is that my producer or our sound engineer, a wonderful sound engineer, Houston, that puts more work on his plate at the 11th hour, because I don't like to do that. And that's, me being mindful and respectful, but then there's also the people pleaser component of me too. But yesterday it was like, I don't record today. Like I didn't, it was like I didn't have anything to say. And you you all know that that is not a space that I am comfortable with, is not knowing what to say because it just comes. But it was like I don't know what to say because my frequency feels a little bit um out of bounds. My frequency is out of bounds as far as touching base with you all and being in frequency and resonance with you all. And I feel that when I connect, when I record. I know and I feel those things. And yesterday I didn't know and I couldn't perform. And that is a truth and a secret about me, is I know how to tap dance. I and some of you have heard me say this to you in sessions and in readings when I say, "Oh, you're a tap dancer like me." And I get it because I know how to suit up, show up, and bring the jazz, bring the sparkle. My energy field knows how to just show up even when I don't have it, even when I don't want to. It just comes. And that has been one thing that I have been deconstructing, and it's in something deeper than that. I've been deconstructing what it means to be valuable, to be useful, and to be productive. And for a long time, and I had this like aha awakening not that long ago, that I have bowed to the altar of productivity most of my life. And what I mean by that is that if I, in my mind, if I am productive, then I am useful and that is valuable. I feel like that's how that translates for me, is if I am productive, I get things accomplished, I get things done, then I am useful and I am showing up and I am valuable. It is worthy. I am worthy. And that has been unraveling, and what it has been for me. And this is where I want you to reflect in terms of what has been unraveling for you, where you've been uninspired or unclear or feeling a sense of hollowness. What is shifting? What plate tectonics within yourself and your soul are shifting? And to be able to embrace it as sacred rather than uninspired or hollow, that it's liminal. And liminal space, that in between, that unknowing, not knowing, uncertainty, is just as much a part, if not maybe the quantum part of spiritual growth and evolution, as the productivity or the output or the external translation of something. And where for me this clicks, and I want you to maybe consider this, is I have been unweaving an old karmic contract, where my contract said my energy is worthy only if it's performing or producing. And that's a like, even when I say that, it hits my heart because it brings me sadness and it brings me truth because it's honest, right? It's raw that this contract, like a sacred contract, I am here and I am breaking. It's like a spell. I feel like I have been under a spell. That sounds so witchy. I feel like I've been under a spell, like a guise, a delusion, an illusion, maybe illusion and delusion for the greater part of my existence here. And it's like in its last bit of disentanglement. And I've lived inside that spell for a long time that my productivity, that my performance is where my value is. And I know my value is in my presence. And I touched on that in the last couple of podcasts. And it's not that I'm not present or I don't know how to be present and I'm not inauthentic. Because when I show up with you all, it's maybe one of the most present places I know how to be. And yesterday I realized I didn't want to be present. I couldn't be present. And I honored that. And today I'm like, oh, I'm present. I'm here. I'm true with you all. This is the frequency. And I can feel it out there in those of you listening that you're present right now. Like you're present. And it's fleeting sometimes, but noticing where you feel fully present, even when it is sombering or sobering or sad, or it is delightful and joyful. What, how is your presence evolving? And a lot of this transition for me and growth has been in metabolizing this shift from external effort to this new internal coherence. Because I know and I've experienced what it feels like, that place of finding my center within, feeling the center, being in the center, living in the center or the presence, the true presence within, being very anchored into that and connected, rooted and connected higher above, so to speak. But my internal coherence is like that frequency is shifting. So anchoring it in can sometimes feel very uncomfortable and out of whack. And one of the questions that I've contemplated for and been practicing, like it's been like the yoga of my life. And for those of you who are not familiar with that term, the yoga of your life, yoga definitely has a practice quality to it where you go into a studio or within a group and you practice the asanas. That's the Sanskrit word for movements, the asanas of yoga. But yoga has this 8-limb path, and there's multiple parts of yoga, and it's the part of the yoga of my life, the living of the presence of my life. And my question has been, what if rest and slowness and lack of clarity are new forms of power that I've never been taught to trust? Like getting curious about the rest and the slowness and the uncertainty and the liminal space as if it were this engaged new horizon. The liminal space for me has become this new adventure and I am craving it. And sometimes the trick of my mind in art, they call that trompe l'oeil. It means trick of the eye, trompe l'oeil. I had a minor in art history. I don't know how that came to me. The word trompe l'oeil always stuck with me, trick of the eye. And these painters, especially these Renaissance painters, would do a lot of trompe l'oeil, trick of the eye. So, things felt closer or farther away. It had to do with depth and dimension. But anyway, I feel like right now, this trompe l'oeil that I've had going on is, what if my rest and my slowness is actually like the juice, the stuff, the new frontier? and it's going to create a greater presence versus a productivity. Can I honor that? Am I brave enough to honor the slowdown? And what my rational mind will say is, you're not doing enough. You should be. You need to be. So, things to think about are the sacredness of our liminal space or the uncertainty, the in between, and how our spiritual maturity includes embracing confusion or lack of clarity. I have found that so disconcerting and awkward and wildly rewarding. And I know that sounds so funny, but the stiller, I know that's not a word. The more still I get, the quieter I get, the more that I lean into, for lack of better terminology, the more that I lean into the respite, the relaxation, the more poignant and louder my truth or my wisdom is becoming. And what's scary about that is I'm changing. I'm saying no to things or yes to things in a much more discerning fashion and almost with an emphatic quality, an emphasis like, oh, no, my body will tell me no to something. And now I don't deny it because it's actually become loud. If I am not supposed to do, if something is out of coherence with me, an event, friendship, recording the podcast, like whatever it may be, the no, it like shows up in my body. And whether it comes as indigestion, pain someplace in my body, a heaviness, it can show up a multitude of ways, but I am not ignoring the physical response of my body. So that's one of the things that I encourage everybody right now. And I've said this before, but really July is such a month of imprint to take note. And the physical body is a great temperature gauge for what may or may not be resonant for you and helping you to make the leap, the frequency shift that we are. It's like we're in the middle ground of it. I don't even have a good word, but I can feel it because it's enriching for me. It's sacred, and I can sometimes feel also, this is what's been bizarre for me, is I feel extremely introverted, like almost like elusive and hermit-like. And it's funny because you all know this when I talk about numerology. I'm a 9 attitude, a 9 life path, born in a 9 year. We're in a 9 universal year, but I feel so 9, and the 9 in the tarot is the hermit. Like, sometimes I'm like, "Oh my gosh, am I just like a hermit and shutting out? Or am I listening deeper? Am I being truer?" And it's not that I don't show up and engage in the world and delight in certain engagements, because I do. And I know which people, places, and experience create upliftment, joy, delight, resonance, and cohesion. And I am painfully aware of what or whom does not. And some that has a little bit of grief and heartache and fear for me because it's old habits, people pleasing, accommodating, accommodating. And I have become unaccommodating. And I don't mean that I'm intolerant or not loving and genuine and connective, because I am those things, but my body physically is not over giving, overproductive, overproducing, overly generous. My um sparkle isn't that way. I walked into this event that I had the other day and I like sat down on this sofa, and I guess it was all over my body language, right? And this woman goes, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? You're not your sparkly self." And she said it just like that. Her voice is kind of like that. "Oh my gosh, you're not your sparkly self." And what was so funny is like 3 years ago, this woman said that to me. Another woman, not that woman, another woman said that to me, and I remember I got so hacked off 'Cause I was like, "How did she notice? I'm just fine. Don't ask me how I am." Like, even though I was tired and exhausted, my first reaction to that was like, "I can't believe you just said that. Like, I'm fine. Don't ask me." I was so obstinate and I had a tude. I had a total attitude. And then I realized, and I remember this is years ago, right? I said to the lady, I said, I'm just kinda tired today. Like, I'm good, and I was good, but I just wanna be here and listen." Anyway, so the other day when this other woman said, "You're not your sparkly self," and I was like, "I'm good." It did not offend me in the least because I wasn't performing. I wasn't sparkling to just sparkle. Right? And again, I told y'all I'm a tap dancer. I know how to tap dance, and I actually don't know how to tap dance for anything. But, like, she was like, "You're not sparkly." And I'm like, "I'm good. Yeah." But just because 'cause I'm not sparkling doesn't mean, like, I'm not true. And but I didn't react to her. The voice in my head did not react. I didn't get like, there's something has shifted in me where it's starting to translate externally, and I felt comfortable with that dialogue. So that was this cool evidence that this presence over performance is starting to, like, to root, to vibrate externally, and internally, it's clicking, like, in my data, in my head, my cohesion, my neural pathways, whatever it may be, my consciousness, my ego, right? Because this is a lot of ego stuff that feels like it's, becoming softer and more connected to my higher self, more connected. Another thing that's come up for me too through this slowdown is feeling like I'm creatively blocked, and I'm not creatively blocked, but it's like I don't have the umph to summon something from nothing, and I'm not succumbing to that. I'm not being seduced by the need to be productive or busy when I don't have it, and I don't want to summon creativity for the sake of summoning it, for the sake of productivity or some old outdated sense of self-worth. And what it's become is this energetic gestation for me. Like, I'm just in this gestation period energetically, and I have to say, I'm loving it. Like, I'm in love with my this energetic womb that I'm in right now, and what's funny is some people that I connect with personally sense it. They sense it, they get it, they know it. They don't have to bombard me with questions, and others, like, don't get it or think I'm or taking it personally or in their own insecurity for lack of not having their own center as their feeding ground, as their wellspring of their own personal integrity and security. And this is not a judgment, but it's like the people that are like clawing and needing, I can feel that. And then the people that are just like, gosh, I get it. Yeah, me too, girlfriend. I love getting to talk to somebody I haven't spoken with in a handful of months, and we pick up right where we left off. I had that the other day with a good friend of mine, and she and I probably hadn't talked in 8 months, and she had reached out and was like, "I was thinking about you," and then we connected, and it was, like, so amazing. She was like, "Ugh, we just had our own soul session," and I was like, "Yeah, like, we just had a soul session." Because she was experiencing the same shifts and growth, and so was I, but it was coming from this mutual cohesive place of, like, mutual respect, mutual, "I see you, you see me," instead of me needing to grasp at you and pay attention to me, and, like, there's a difference. There's a difference, and so noticing that, and that may sound a little bit harsh, but my energy field doesn't have the space to hold and lift up others in the way that I used to give that away for performance rather than presence. So just look at what's happening within you. So deconstructing the identity of being productive, maybe that resonates with you, and really think about that. But also learning to trust the blank space, like learning to trust the blank page, the blank canvas, the blank space. What if the blankness isn't a void to be filled. And that's, I'm going to repeat that because that's what's come up for me is what if my blank space isn't some void that I need to fill? Because I'm a filler, like a busy, a do, productive. Like I've told you, it's productivity, my altar of sacred productivity, that can be misguided. What if the blankness isn't a void to be filled, but maybe this kind of gestational sacred womb to be trusted while it is maturing, while it is growing and evolving? So it's this powerful recalibration that really is happening in the energy field. And even when I'm silent, this is another big one for me. Even when I am so still and so silent, I know my soul, my higher self, the universe, God is listening. When I am just as still as I can be, I can feel the universe communing with me and listening. And it feels more enriching than producing. Another thing is, like for me, and this is where I get stuck a little bit sometimes, is in this need to explain. I am a splainer. I am a justifier and a splainer. And, it's like, blah, 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 but, or, well, I didn't do this because, or no, I can't do this because. That is my MO, has been my MO so much of my life. I have not been one of those people that just grasp the concept of yes is a complete sentence and no is a complete sentence. I always feel like there needs to be a justification. And that's changing a bit too. I'm really, I have not quantum leaped over that that great barrier yet. But what is emerging in me does not need to be explained. And while, yes, I'm explaining this to you all because this space to me feels like we're going through this. This isn't just me. This is our space where whatever is shifting, whatever plate tectonics are shifting within us, do we always have to explain them? And if we're having to explain them, what does that say? So it's kind of like paradoxically not explaining and being uncomfortable in not explaining, because not explaining for me sometimes can feel really uncomfortable because I feel it's people pleasing and it's reverse ego is what it is. It's ego. Let me tell you why. Let me justify this. Let me make it beautiful on the outside so I make you feel more comfortable. So I make you feel more comfortable with my discomfort or change. And paradoxically, it's like this deeper transmission where the changes that are going on internally are not needing to be loudly explained or expressed on the surface. Another thing that is really cool, and I mean, time is shifting, right? We've got linear time and multidimensional time, and I am enjoying playing with time right now. And everything seems to click exactly when I don't think it's going to, or in divine timing, or both at the same time. Meaning, it's like, this is not Amanda's clock. I'm in the clock, but there is this bigger, sacred, divine orchestration of things. That's my dog, Slim. He came in here and the neighbor's walking with his dog. He sees them outside. So, but it's like being true to time beyond time and knowing that my frequency is shifting so drastically that I need this sacred quiet to allow things to click in divine timing. So sometimes the way I explain that in like just layman's terms for all of us and for myself is sometimes I'll get a client or someone who, is looking for love or a new job, whatever it may be. And they're like, but when? Like, when is the date? When is this going to happen? Well, usually the way that they show me things are multiple probable outcomes. They show me the highest path forward if like you're doing the work and it's coming through and the growth is happening. But there's always this factor of whomever your person is or wherever this next job opportunity is. There's other things that need to happen in other people's energy fields. The job may not be available yet. The person may not be available yet either. that it is not just about me. There's this like sacred change or unraveling going on in the field. So even though I'm ready for the frequency to shift or me to be able to completely explain this to you all in a very clear way, it's like, but everybody else's frequency fields are shifting too. So we're in this transition together and we're not alone. We're all very interconnected. So what I'm noticing in the quiet is what I used to miss in the noise. So think about that for yourself. What are you noticing when you make space for your quiet, sacred time that maybe you missed in the busyness and the noise? And another simple way of framing this as a question or a journal prompt and reflection is, what if nothing is wrong with this pause? Because my rational brain goes to, oh, I'm not productive. I'm not doing enough. I'm being lazy. That's what my rational mind will tell me. I'm just being lazy. And it's like, but I'm honoring that I need that rest. And like, what if nothing is wrong with it? What if it's exactly how it's supposed to be? And I trust that it is exactly how it's supposed to be because I can feel it. But think about that for yourself when you need solitude, quiet time, when you say no to something, when you take things, when you remove things from your plate. What if, like, deep down, you can honor nothing is wrong with that? Now, some of you out there know nothing is wrong with that. Nope, I'm going to say no. I'm going to do what I want to do. Like, we've got a lot of blunt people out there. And gosh, I love my like definitive blunt folks that they know their yes and they know their no. And I know quite a handful of people like that. And gosh, I'm always mesmerized by them. Sometimes they can be a little harsh. My feelers can get hurt in those things, but, not so much anymore because I really am always, um, drawn to people who have very strong, definitive personalities and viewpoints, which can be dogmatic too and rigid. There's the shadow of all those elements. But for me, deep down, it's like, something is wrong with me needing this rest. Something is wrong with my hormones or my vitality or my apathy or detachment. And it's not that I am apathetic or detaching. I am really reattaching to something deeper. So, what if nothing is wrong with you needing to reserve, to pull back? And that this liminal space is a wise and rightful part of your evolution and rite of passage. It feels like a rite of passage right now. For me, another question that I've really reflected on is, what has room to emerge or grow when I stop trying to perform or be impressive and just let myself be present? And I will tell you, for me, what's been coming through is peace. And then there'll be like a tidal wave of fear, and it'll be peace or trueness. It's like this vast trueness, right? Are you willing to trust the wisdom of not knowing right now? Can you allow this not knowing to be fertile instead of frustrating? That is probably one of the greatest things that keeps coming up is I'm becoming less frustrated with myself and more fertile. And in a way that I said I was sharing with you that is hard to externally articulate because the language hasn't arrived yet. The outer identity has not caught up with the inner tectonic shifts. So asking yourself what identities you're quietly outgrowing without needing to announce it. July is such a presence building space that doesn't feel like it's big on publicizing. There's a lot of inner dialogue and communion happening if you allow it and make the time for it without the need for the external validation or immediate gratification or productivity and performance. See if you can honor that part of your presence and your stillness without a checklist or action items. And it doesn't mean that you don't take action or put things into motion, but it is an important time and a fruitful time to really to let part of yourself dissolve, to let part of yourself grow through dissolving, if you can. And even if you can't name it. So I hope this resonates with everyone. And I thank you all for showing up. I hope to see many of you at the full moon ceremony on the 10th. And I just want to let you all know how meaningful your energy field is and your presence and how powerful it is. Remembering how powerful your stillness and your presence and your communion with yourself is. And right now, this womb, this fertile stage that we're in, is like this is where the rubber meets the road, but it's behind the scenes. It's not on the outside so much as it is deeply, deeply fruitful on the inside. So trust that, trust your stillness, and really take some introspective and solitary time this month for and with yourself. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Be well.